Welcome back to the Old Fly Guy Network, and thanks for continuing to follow us as we travel across the country meeting exciting aviators. And as always, we hope you subscribe to the channel and give us the thumbs up that you like what we're doing, and we're going to keep doing more of that. Today we're in Broomfield, Colorado, meeting with Gretchen Jahn at the Rocky Mountain Metro Airfield. And if you ever wanted to hear about what it takes to lead an aerospace manufacturing group, or to have stopwatch accuracy in cross-country aviation racing, and be a motivational leader in several national aviation organizations, I know we're going to get to those topics and many more with Gretchen today. So first of all, thank you, Gretchen, for taking the time today and allowing us in your airspace.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. So far, we've had a great time. Gretchen has a long and varied career in the aviation marketplace, holding a variety of leadership roles in business, supporting organizations that promote aviation and participates in competitive aviation racing organizations. So stay with us. We've got a lot to talk about in Gretchen's aviation journey. So let's get started here today. We're in at Rocky Mountain Regional Airport. How does that play into where you live here?
Yes.
And how does that play into your your aviation journey?
Well, I live just down the hill,
Okay.
off the end of the runway, and moving here was a very important choice for us. When we moved back to the United States and back to Denver, it was what airport are we going to be based at, and that's what drove where we bought a house.
So your decision making wasn't as much about the house, but it was how close you were to the airport.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and to make sure that we had an airport and a hangar so we can get an airplane.
And how long, when you said how long have you been in Denver? I think this was not your first stop here, but how long have you been back in Denver?
I've been back here since 2009.
2009. Okay, and so there was somewhere else, and we're going to get to that
Right.
in a minute, and a little bit here. So, in aviation, what was the spark? How long, was there something that as a young person this got you going, or when did that all how did it all glue together to get you to be flying and have your own plane?
Well, unlike a lot of people in aviation, it was not my early dream. It was my early love, although I do remember my first airplane flight. I was 6 years old at the time. We were moving from Minneapolis to Boston. I'm in my Sunday best, climbing into the airplane. The floor is sloped, looking out the window, waving at the neighbors as we left. That left a big impression on me. I just loved the airplane ride, but it did not kindle in me a desire to pursue aviation at the time. I was so focused on horses that it didn't happen. And in fact, I got into aviation. It's basically my husband's fault, because after we got married.
So I'm going to blame him but blame in a good way, it sounds like.
Oh, it's a great way.
Thank you.
It's a great way. Not long after we got married, he spent some time in Alaska for work.
Okay.
Getting the equipment to the island required, helicopters, float planes, and coming back, he wanted to learn to fly.
Okay.
So after he got his license, I flew with him. We flew all over the United States. I was right seat. I learned to navigate, flight plan, do the radios. So it kept encouraging me to get to the left seat, and well, so what's so wonderful about that?
Right. It's kind of nice over here.
Yeah, but it wasn't until he went off on a bicycle trip with a friend for 3 weeks, and we weren't flying, that I discovered that I really missed it. So I interviewed instructors, I selected someone, and I had several lessons by the time he came back. I learned to fly just down at Centennial Airport here in the south
Over
of the Denver
Centennial?
area. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Neighbors to where we are right now, actually, as you fly. And when was that? About what time frame was that?
Yeah, I got my license in 1985.
Okay.
In July of 85.
Okay.
And we owned an airplane at the time.
So
but I did not learn.
He had his, you were still flying right seat at that point, and that's is that the plane you learned to fly in?
No.
Okay.
No, I wouldn't learn to fly or drive in my father's car, so I wasn't going to learn to fly in my husband's airplane, which became our airplane.
Okay.
I transitioned to it, but no, I flew 152s at the flight school just like everybody else,
Right.
and then transitioned into a teal wheel airplane, which is what we owned.
Yeah, that's still on my list to get my tailwheel endorsement, by the way. But
Yeah.
I'm sure you have pretty passionate about
Yeah.
that type of aircraft.
Yeah,
And,
yeah, I loved it. And unfortunately, I'm one of those people that I had a foot-brain interconnect problem where trying to get the
Oh.
feet to work. So, and my flight instructor knew that I was going to be transitioning to a tailwheel airplane. So one lesson I showed up and he had found a Texas tail dragger, which is a 152 with a tail wheel.
Oh,
Actually,
okay.
150 with tail wheel. And we spent the entire lesson at Centennial Airport, which at the time was the third busiest GA airport in the country, taxiing.
just practicing.
And at the time, the ground control covered more of the ground space than they do today. So it was constantly tied to them, taxiing onto the runway, lifting the tail, putting it back down, taxiing off. We drove them crazy for an entire hour.
Okay.
But by the end of that, my feet were connected.
Okay, and that's what I heard. The taxiing is a good part of that skill set. Someone tried to explain it to me in one of our discussions. It's like pushing a shopping cart backwards to learn how to a little bit get the feel for
Yeah.
how it works and those reactions and that
Right.
skill set.
Well, that can be, a reasonable analogy, but there's also a saying that they have that with a tailwheel airplane, you are constantly flying it from when you wheel it out of the hangar until you push it back in.
Okay.
Okay, that there's the taxiing, everything with taking off, landing, that your feet have to be alive and connected.
All the time. You
Through
get a
that.
little spoiled in a tricycle gear,
Right.
I guess is what you're saying. The so kind of thinking about that, it sounds like you've had a series of airplane ownership. Is that right? What are
Yes,
some?
yeah, we did, and in parallel with the airplane and all of that, I was also busy with my work career, but we'll talk about
Yep.
that later. When I decided that it was time to get my instrument rating, well, the airplane that we had was the Mall.
Oh, okay.
Which is, as I said, it's sort of like a Cub on steroids. It's very unstable in the air. I think we probably had one of a handful of instrument-equipped Malls in the country,
All right.
but it's what we had. So that's what I got my instrument rating in, and it's extremely unstable. But we did fly it in instrument conditions.
Right.
And we survived to tell the tale. But it got to the point we were flying all over the countryside and flying to visit relatives in Arkansas, in California, in North Dakota, and Minnesota, Idaho, and we're living here in Colorado. We needed something that went a little faster, so we traded up to a 182 RG, which
Okay.
I just loved, and it's a great instrument platform.
Mm-hmm.
We flew that all over everywhere. We flew it down into Central America,
Oh,
on
wow.
various trips. Just absolutely loved it.
So you went from the Mall to the 182 RG,
Right.
and then what was next? Because I think did you have what was after that?
Okay. What was after that was a Mooney Ovation. Now, that was the time that I went to work at Mooney.
Okay.
And personally, I didn't feel that I could really fly the competitors' equipment
And
while
that
I
was
was
probably
there.
a bit of a good decision and a little bit of a challenge.
Right. And part of the deal with Mooney is that I could fly any airplane that they had. However, at the time, they didn't have any. Okay? So we sold the 182 RG, and because the company didn't own any, I bought one. I bought one off the factory floor. I had a rule, and just for our listeners, I went to Mooney as the CEO to bring it out of bankruptcy, and we'll tell more
Yeah,
about how that
I
happened.
want to capture
Yeah.
that, but I think it's interesting
Let's
that
talk about this particular story now.
Yeah.
That, and I had a rule that when we, quote unquote, make an airplane, which for me was when you mate the wings to the fuselage, that we had to have a sales order for it. And we had one Ovation coming down the line that did not have a sales order. So I said, we'll buy that.
okay.
And everyone thinks, oh, you got a great deal. Well, no, at the time, our sales philosophy is price integrity. And so we always sold them at list price. So I paid list price. And I didn't realize at the time how powerful that was, because then the entire sales force could say to customers who wanted a deal, say, I'm sorry, sales price, it's the list price. Even our CEO paid list price
Right.
when she bought her airplane. So
Sure, you were a good example for that marketing strategy.
And I didn't even
So there's
think
good
of it.
news and bad news. A great strategy, you
Yeah.
paid full price.
Right. I didn't even think of it at the time.
Okay.
So,
Okay, all right. So you went from that, and if we just transition through the aircraft, then we'll come
Right.
back, but, and then,
and then when we moved overseas, I sold it.
okay,
And I flew, borrowed airplanes. I had an individual there who loaned us his airplane while he was ill. It was a Robin from France.
okay,
He had imported it, so I flew it. Plus, the factory that I worked for there was manufacturing Robin aircraft. We renamed them as the Alpha.
okay.
So I flew those. And then when we moved back, it was, okay, now what do I fly? And, there was a period of transition, and then we went into partnership with a friend of mine on an RV-7. She had an RV-6. She was having a hard time keeping up with her formation flying buddies, so needed an
Something a little
RV-7. And Carl and I had talked and said, well, we think an RV-7 would be like the next
Next step.
for us.
Okay,
So we went into partnership, the three of us. We bought an airplane that had been built by a gentleman in Arizona. It was gorgeous, just gorgeous airplane. We flew that for a number of years until it got to the point where it was very difficult for me to get in and out of it.
okay,
So I sold out of that partnership. We then bought a straight leg 182,
okay.
which I flew in, Carl and I flew until 2020 when COVID hit.
Wow.
And when his
And you were
health
telling
was
me that's
difficult.
about when you sold it in that
Yes.
range, but what a
Yeah.
what a variety of owned aircraft plus the other ones that you talked about that you had a chance to fly in. Wow, that's great experience. It
Yes.
shivered just thinking about having the opportunity to be in all those aircraft. So we were kind of teasing the group a little bit, and I have a little bit of the front end of the story, but we talked about when you started flying, how you got into some planes, but I think there's kind of a unique trend. I mean, when you started, you weren't in pure aviation by any means, were you? Didn't you start in a little different market?
Yes, I began my career in IT. I was on the early forefront of that. I was fortunate to be hired by the Digital Equipment Corporation. This was in the 70s, 80s. They were, at that time, looking to hire more women and minorities. And so you could either get upset about that or you could grab that brass ring, and I decided to go
grab
for it.
Okay.
And all of my background up to that point in time was scientific. I had initially thought, well, I was going to be a brain surgeon until I got to college and decided, no, I really liked psychology and anthropology and IT better. I'm one of those people where I become enamored of something and I get myself really immersed in it and really go after it for some period of time until the next wonderful thing comes along. There are those who have long-term dreams.
Right, from day one type of thing.
And that's great, that's wonderful, but I'm not one of them. So I've had a fabulous career because of that. So the IT took me quite a ways. I was put into the commercial group rather than the scientific group, which was a very fortuitous thing because I absolutely loved it. I then became enamored of business and manufacturing. I have some additional degrees in that. Got very involved in it, and I had my one good idea and decided to start a company making software for pharmaceutical and biotech manufacturers to help them improve quality and yield and demonstrate regulatory compliance, and that's my elevator pitch. With a partner, we raised venture capital for this company from little guys like Merck and GlaxoSmithKline
Okay.
and Sanofi Aventis and places like
So
that.
you had a lot of backing on something that must have been pretty successful and still is, I guess.
It is. The software product is now part of the software suite that is owned by Dassault Systems. And it has been used on a wide variety of drugs. You've probably used a drug that my software has improved.
Okay.
The wonderful thing about venture capital is it helps you get your company going. The bad thing about venture capital is that it ends up consuming the entire company. Plus, I'm the sort of person where my talents are really good in getting groups of people together, pursuing an idea, getting it off the ground, figuring out how to do it, all of these wonderful, exciting things in the early years. But once the company gets to a more steady state, I'm not the best leader for that. There are other people who do that much better. So I hired in somebody else to be the CEO of my company, and I moved on to other things, and which was a good thing because in the software and the venture community at that time, you do a whole lot of networking. I was very, very active in networking, as well as all the networking I did in the aviation organizations I was in at the time.
Okay.
And because of that, I came into contact with a number of recruiters, one of whom was a recruiter for Mooney. And she actually lived locally and she thought I would be a good candidate for being a CEO. They were not looking for anybody who had an aviation background.
Oh,
They were
interesting.
looking for, yes, very interesting. They were looking for someone who understood business, restarts, manufacturing, all sorts of things that I do have. Although when I sat down in my first interview with her, about 10 minutes into the conversation, I asked her the question that they couldn't ask me, but I could ask them, which was, the management team here are all guys and I'm not. How's that going to work? Well, it turned out that because of the culture of the company, it worked. The culture of Mooney is family.
Okay.
And up to that point in time, they'd always been run by a father figure. Sometimes functional, most of the time dysfunctional. So I figured, okay, we could have it be run by a mother figure.
Okay.
Okay? All right, and so sometimes, you kiss boo-boos and,
Well,
prop 'em
maybe
up.
there's a different mindset.
Yeah, and sometimes it's sit up straight at the table, and sometimes it's go to your room, and sometimes you throw them out of the house.
Okay.
Right? So with that kind of mindset, it worked.
Okay.
And we were able to get the company up and running and going. And rebuilding market confidence was a very interesting thing because you'd been bankrupt for a while. How do you convince someone to buy what was at the time $500,000, $600,000 airplane? Today it's closer to 900, whatever.
Okay.
And have them have confidence that the
gonna be
factory
around?
will support them. Correct.
Right.
Now, another thing that I brought to the table, which was also came about because of my husband's doing.
More credit.
More credit.
Okay.
More
2
credit.
for you.
2 for him.
Eh.
Yeah, well, actually, he gets a whole lot more credit for all kinds of
We're going to keep
things.
adding them up.
Yes, we will. But when I got my license, he introduced me to the 99s. It's the International Organization of Women Pilots. So I went to a local chapter meeting. This is in the summer. And locally, they sponsored a one-day air race. So I raised my hand to volunteer to time down at Santa Fe.
Okay.
Final flyby. Here are all these airplanes, 200 feet or less above the runway, going as fast as they could go. I'm taking their time, and I'm thinking, I got to get me some of that.
Okay.
Okay. So I got involved in air racing.
Okay. So that's the air racing. So we've got, so far we're talking about, and this is why when we planned for this a little bit, you talked about business. We didn't just talk about aviation. We've talked about, the aircraft, and then the air racing, which I know it's right here on the shirt, the Air Racing
The Air Race
Classic
Classic.
A-Racer in red, and you told me that's the appropriate color too. So we've got all of that laid out, but now it's fascinating. We got IT, you used your building and your knowledge of business, which was the foundation of success for Mooney, is to help turn that around. Even throw in another element, you were already flying at that time, and
Yes.
you were doing some flying, and so while they weren't looking for someone that was 10,000 hours, they found someone that had a respect for aviation as well.
Yes, yes. But the racing was even more than that as far as Mooney was concerned. I had flown in a number of races. The big one is called the Air Race Classic. It's a 4-day race for women only, and we'll talk about that in
Okay.
a little bit more. But I had built a reputation in racing and a reputation with all of my networking in aviation organizations and being very active and running committees and doing all kinds of things. So I essentially used that to help Mooney bring it market recognition. Mooney was known as the fast airplane. Mooney was all about speed.
Okay,
Racing is all about speed.
all right.
Okay?
So those kind of go together?
Connecting the dots,
Right.
yes. And in fact, we had one exhibit at Oshkosh. This is after I had flown my plane in the Air Race Classic and had won that year in my Mooney. Okay, so the theme was fast, faster, fastest. So my airplane was fast, because it won the air race. Faster is we had brought out another model, and I'm having a brain fade here in terms of the name of the model, but
Okay.
there's a faster model.
Okay.
And then the fastest model was the Acclaim, okay, which was turbo normalized.
Okay,
So that was our big.
that was your spectrum of aircraft.
Exhibit that year, yes. And I have a story about the Acclaim, if you'd like me to tell that.
Sure, I
Okay.
want to understand the dynamics of the racing, because again, as I
Sure.
told you, I think of these flying around things, and I'm not sure that's really
Yeah.
what it is.
No,
But
it
okay,
will, but we'll tell the Acclaim story first.
Okay.
All right. So here I am at Mooney, and we've got some production going, and manufacturing, and all kinds of things. And the marketing department wants to bring out a new model. And so they go through all of their market studies, and they bring to the product development committee a plan for a turbo-normalized airplane. And they've got the engineering plan for it, and how it's going to sell, all kinds of wonderful things, and how much it's going to cost. And so they go through the presentation, and it's very interesting. But I say to them, well, okay, so are you ever going to build it? Oh, yeah, because there's nothing in the plan about production. So they go off and they figure out the production costs and tooling, and bless their hearts, they put in quality. And they bring that revised plan. Again, it's very interesting. Then I say to them, are you ever going to sell it? Oh, yeah. Okay. So they go off and they do
some
a
marketing.
marketing plan and a sales plan and how they're going to train the sales reps. Come back to that, and I go, great. Are you ever going to support it? Oh, yeah.
this is one step at a time. I don't know how long this all takes.
No, this is the last step. And, I thought for sure that they would get clued in right at the very beginning, but they didn't.
Right.
And
That was part of that sit up straight.
yeah. So they come back, the whole thing, and the cost was now double what they first had. I said, okay, now I have something. I can go to the board of directors and see how we fund this. And that's what became the Acclaim.
Okay.
Now, when we were bringing it out, we were selling and producing Ovations and Bravos. And I knew that once we announced the Acclaim, that people would want to wait for the Acclaim.
And then maybe not buy the other aircraft?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Which means that we wouldn't be able to have the factory running, right? Because there wouldn't be anything to build. So at my company meetings, and here we have 300 and some people at our company meetings once a month. I say, most of you know about the Acclaim. I need you to not talk about it. Not talk about it to anybody. Not to your spouse, your friends, not anybody. And here's why. This is what we will do to your job.
Mm-hmm. So
Okay.
you had a little bit of carrot
Yeah.
and stick there.
Yeah. And bless their hearts, they didn't talk to anybody. And the market didn't get twigged until something was going on, until we flew the airplane to the paint shop. And it flew faster than people expected. There's the whole Mooney community. They watch FlightAware and everything else. And so there's all this chatter about
Here's this plane.
this airplane. All right, but we managed to tamp it down. And our unveiling was going to be at Sun and Fun.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So they're getting ready to go to Sun and Fun, and I'm sitting there in my office, and I think, well, I'm going to Sun and Fun. I'd like to fly this airplane. So I said, I'd like to fly this airplane. And they're like, okay. she is a pilot. She is the CEO. She can do that. And I had one of the test pilots go with me.
Okay.
Flying this together. So here we're up. We're face masks at 25,000 feet. And,
Wow.
I mean, this is an amazing experience. Just amazing. And we're at the unveiling at Sun and Fun, and they thought we were unveiling a new paint job, right?
Oh,
Because
okay. So you still kept the secret pretty well.
kept until the press conference. And I have my script that the marketing people had written for me, and when I get to the part about flying it, I said, I'm not going to read the script. And I tell the audience, I'm going to tell you what I saw when I was flying this airplane here. And so I went through everything I saw and everything I experienced and what have you. And it wasn't until I was all done and afterwards, in watching my marketing people's eyes roll, and saying, oh, she's going off script again.
She's off the runway.
Off the runway. But apparently I did pretty okay.
Okay.
And I thought, how powerful that is from a marketing perspective to hear a real life experience.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that it hadn't even occurred to me until then. So, well, what
Some of
does
the
that-
best things
yeah,
happen
Yeah,
on the moment.
yeah, in the moment. So that was a great experience. Wonderful airplane, absolutely wonderful airplane.
Oh, wow.
Everything you could dream
And
of.
and so just because wouldn't have a feel, what does it take timeline from kind of idea to making one? What does it take in today's world to
Oh.
make that happen, just timeline?
Well, if you're doing it clean sheet, that's a very different kind of deal. In this particular case, we were taking an existing airframe
Okay.
and everything else that goes into that, and existing wing and so on, and we were putting on a new engine and all of the R&D that goes into the cowling that's so very important
Okay.
with the engine. Most pilots don't realize how important the aerodynamics are of the inside of the cowling relative to both the engine but also to the speed of the airplane.
Okay. I'll admit I didn't.
And I
kind of makes
didn't-
some sense, but
yeah.
I don't think.
I didn't realize it either, and I certainly am not an engineer, and I can't cite chapter and verse about what's involved, but I do know that it's very technical. We had a very talented young engineer who used all of his modeling software to come up with what the numbers were for the airplane, and he met every single one of them.
Okay.
In terms of speeds and stall speeds and, never exceed and all this kind of stuff. I was truly amazed. Did a great job. Okay.
Is that even on the one that you had something to start with? Is that a year or 18 months or?
That was, it was, I think it was supposed to be a year, and it
Okay.
ended up being more like 14, 15
months. Okay. So it's not over the top long
No,
when you
no,
when
no.
you got something to start
Not
with.
just when you're doing an engine program. Now, if you're doing something from scratch, that, you want a budget for minimum 8 to 10 years.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I hear about the just government and all the things that go along that
Yeah.
you're satisfying. I'm sure that
Well,
process takes a while.
Well, it also depends on where it is that you do the work. If you do the work here in the U.S., you're talking easy 150, 200 million, and that's probably on the low end.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you do it in a country like New Zealand, which is where I was, they have a very different kind of regulatory environment, and it costs about 2/3 of what it costs here, even though you pay the regulator for their time, whereas here the FAA is federally funded
Okay.
for all the work that they do with the manufacturers.
And so when you, and you just said two things, I'm not sure which way you want to go, but from Mooney, was there an overseas next step? Or I
Yes.
know we want to talk about racing, so which way
Right.
do you want to go next?
Let's do the business progression.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, I was Mooney for several years. Brought them out of bankruptcy. The company was going and blowing and what have you. But I had a difference of opinion with the board of directors.
Okay.
Okay, so we parted ways,
All right.
and they brought in someone else. And so I was sort of in between things, but I had a network, and some members of that network were down in New Zealand, and so they approached me about coming to run an aircraft manufacturing company down there,
Okay.
Alpha Aviation. They had bought the type certificate from the designer in France, moved all of the tooling, all of the drawings, all of the everything
So
that
you
goes
kind of
along
picked
with
everything up?
picked it all up, moved it there. Unfortunately, they didn't bring all of the brains with them. And like most historic manufacturers, a lot of the knowledge
This is historical and embedded.
embedded in the people,
Yep.
as
Yep.
opposed to being in the drawing. So it was quite the interesting thing to try to retrofit much of that and to get the manufacturing up and going.
Okay.
But it was a two-seat, fully aerobatic trainer. It was particularly loved by the ab initio market because unlike the United States, internationally, every make and model is a different type certificate. So if you go from a Cessna 172 to a 182,
Right.
you have ground school, a written exam, an oral exam, a flight exam
For each
for
one.
each transition.
Okay.
Now here, the insurance company mandates that you got to get checked out, and so
Right.
flight school will figure out how to make sure that you are competent.
Right.
But there you have to
Go
have
through kind of like a separate swim lane for each
for
aircraft.
going for each make and model.
Make and model. Okay.
So what they loved about the Alpha is that they could use the same make and model for primary training, instrument training, and upset training. Okay? And they have to go through mild upset, a little bit of loops, rolls, what have you.
Okay.
Now it turns out that that airplane is fully aerobatic, so you could do Lahmschlags slowly. Okay.
You could do all kinds of.
Do all kinds
It's
of
fully
nifty
aerobatic,
things.
okay.
Fully aerobatic. But unfortunately, during my time there, and we physically moved everything to New Zealand, including our two cats. They were the most expensive alley cats in the world by the time we got them there. But you don't leave family behind, so
Right.
we took them with us. And it was quite the interesting thing to be in a new country. But unfortunately, there was the worldwide recession, and so it went bankrupt. Okay, so I got to see
So this was
bankruptcy
in 2000.
and we were over there 2007 through 2009.
Okay.
So the recession was in 2008.
Okay.
Okay? All right. But what was also very interesting, I'll tell this other little story. Because of the difference in the regulatory environment, the CAA in New Zealand certifies people and processes. So they make sure that you have on your staff qualified individuals who are like head of production, head of engineering, head of quality, and they have to go through interviews with a regulator But then a lot of power is delegated to them to make
Okay.
sure that manufacturing is right. And it turns out one of the people that they interview is, the general manager and the CEO, okay? And I didn't really understand what that meant. So when I get this phone call saying, we need you to come in for your interview, I said, well, it's not convenient for me right now. but I'm going to be in Wellington, next month. How about that? Like, okay. So I go in, and one of the major things that is a qualification is to make sure that you are a fit and proper person. That's
Wow.
what it says
How do
in the
we
regulations.
how do we qualify that?
I don't know. how
Well, you must
well.
you must be fit and proper because
Yeah, because I passed. But what was very interesting is I come in for my interview, and I have no idea what I'm supposed to prepare, so I just kind of show up. And they had done some research on the web. So they asked me all kinds of things that they found out about me on the web, like, so tell us about this article you wrote in Anthropology. Okay. So tell us about this patent that you have in in software, in biotech. Tell them about that. Tell us about this. You were giving a speech, and there was a raccoon. So they asked all these things.
So they've done all this.
They've done all this research, and so I tell them all these stories, and then at the end, they never asked me anything about aviation, or running, or business, or nothing. Just all of these things, and then it's like, thank you very much. It's great to meet you.
So this is more about being a proper person, it sounds like.
Right. Okay. It's like, okay. I must have made some reasonable decisions. So.
But it's funny, the business that you were supporting, they didn't go into that at all. They wanted to see all this tangential stuff, which really is the foundation of your success, really.
Right. But it was wonderful living in New Zealand. I absolutely loved it. But then, family, we needed to move back to the United States.
Okay.
So I came back, and I did a lot of consulting work with, companies, many in aviation, one of which was over in Germany.
Okay.
I was part of a 3-person management team. We upskilled the local Germans so that they could take it over and run it themselves. But we took shifts, going back and forth for more than a year.
To help
help
kind of,
them.
again, more about the business side
Right.
to allow the operation side to be successful.
Right. Okay. And that was great. That was wonderful to be able to see them rise to the occasion and be able to do it all themselves, which is great.
And so that sort of that's where you get back to, it was about 2009, you said you were back here, and that's
Yeah.
when you were back to Denver.
In Denver, and then commuting from Denver to Germany.
Or other
And then
spots.
other places around here before retiring. But in the meantime, I continue to participate in racing, air racing, and I even flew in the Around New Zealand air race, which was a very different kind of racing. It was great fun. But the kind of racing that I do here in the U.S., it's cross-country racing, point to point. Each airplane has a handicap, and you essentially fly against the handicap.
Okay.
Whoever does the best against that wins. And to get a handicap, historically there was a sheet by make and model for a particular top speed that you would fly, until they really understood, and I could give them exact data from Mooney that no, our airplanes do not all fly the same.
Okay.
All depends on the equipment that they come with, and who was working that Friday to make that particular aileron or rudder or whatever.
So does each plane then at the end, now it has a specific, so two Moonies sitting side by side might have a different handicap?
Absolutely. And we have a process to do that where you fly at 6,000 density altitude in a box pattern at the best speed, full throttle, full prop, leaned for best power. Carry a logger with you that tracks you and will record your speeds such that we can integrate the box to come up with the maximum speed possible.
Okay, and so that's where my, again, limited understanding of some of the aviation. I think, again, about this pylon racing and all that. But what you're trying to do, and this kind of to the theme of my stopwatch accuracy, is really about almost like a road race of sorts, right? But you're in the sky, and
Yes.
and you go from either airport to airport or town to town, or what is the length of a race?
Well, for instance, this year's race in the Aries Classic, which, by the way, this particular one is for women only. It started in Fairhope, Alabama, which is just across the bay from Mobile. Wound across the country, Colorado, we were in Sterling, up to Gillette, down to Rock Springs, out to the West Coast. We ended up in Spokane, Washington. It's about 2,400 miles. There were 9 legs, plus a few places where you flew over and then changed course so you could do a dog leg around some obstacle like a mountain or restricted airspace or things like that. At each checkpoint along the way, there are also people on the ground to take your time, to back up the logger that you carry with you. But at each checkpoint, you have an opportunity, if you want, to stop, refuel, stay overnight, and then restart your time. You take off again and restart your time to keep going.
Okay.
There's a lot of strategy and tactics involved in this. Everybody has to start the same time. You can take off 30 seconds apart.
Okay.
But after that, it's your own choice as to, once you get to the first stop, do you keep going? Do you stay? What order, I'm sorry, not what order do you do them in, but how quickly, how many do you do in a particular day? I've had some races where we don't go anywhere in a day because of waiting for better winds the next day.
You beat me to it. I didn't even know how you deal with weather, and it is what it is, I guess. And if you're one day you got a headwind and the next day you got a tailwind.
Well, for example, the leg that went from Sterling to Gillette, had I been thinking properly, I would have remembered that as the sun goes down, the wind changes going into Gillette and it comes from the east. But we were so focused on the fact that there was strong headwinds for the later legs that we wanted to get a less of a headwind going from Gillette down to Rock Springs, which was the following leg. So we took some of a headwind, did a very quick turn in Gillette, and went into Rock Springs and got there about 15 minutes before sunset, which is when the deadline was.
Okay.
For the day.
And can you stop at any place, not maybe too much detail, any place along the way? They have designated places, short of an emergency, of course, that you are allowed to stop?
Designated places that you're allowed to stop.
So is it sort of computated like they know how fast you've got the miles, and we know the waypoints, and they have someone to either check you or you have like a logger or maybe a GPS that helps with all that. But then you basically, I guess, climbs and descents and things like that play into it as well.
Oh, yes.
And so you're sort of, if we're going from A, B, and C, and that's 10 miles apart or whatever it is, at your speed, you're perfect. If you hit it, you know what that time is at that speed. You got to either make up or drop some. Can you get there too early type of thing to some place, and that can be bad too?
In this kind of race, there's no such thing as getting there too early.
Okay.
Yeah, which is a good thing. There are other kinds of events where that does come into play, but here it's maximum speed against your handicap.
Okay.
And yes, the speed at which you do climbs and descents does play into it. For instance, on this leg from Gillette to Rock Springs, because of the headwind, lower is better. And one of the things that I and my co-pilot this year, who was this wonderful young woman, Annabelle Kellogg, sophomore in college in Georgia, flying a Mooney that she owns, a 1965 M20E. How can I pass up?
Oh my God.
Okay, how can I
She got
pass
her
this
own
up?
plane here and a sophomore in college?
Yes,
Not
working
doing
on
that.
an aviation degree. But no experience out in the mountains. Yeah. all from there. So we made a very good combination. But we needed to explore how low is low. Because you want to be low, stay out of the winds, but you want to be comfortable that you're not too close to the ground. And you also have to be conscious of the regulations and population and obstacles and all these other kinds of things. So on that leg, because it was a climbing leg, but we wanted to be low, we would fly along for a while, and then I'd say, okay, now come up 200 feet. Okay, now come up another 200 feet. So I very gradually had us do that. And because I had much more experience in the mountains, I was in charge of the altitudes.
Okay.
Whereas she was in charge of getting the most out of the airplane because she understood it. And also it had manual gear, which I can't do, but she can. So she does all the gear up and down.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
So there's also a lot of thinking of all the things that you need to do as a team and who's going to be in charge of what and how you're going to back each other up to make sure that all the things get done. You get penalties if you don't, for instance, do the required radio calls. You need to call 10 miles out, coming in, then 5 miles out, and then as you're approaching the flyby, partly to give the timers on the ground warning, but also to give other people who are both involved in the race, other racers, or people who are not involved in the race, but just flying at their home airport, or some student doing their first solo.
Sure.
A heads up. Yeah, right. There we go. Okay. And there's a lot that goes into the briefings for these about how to peacefully coexist with those who are not aware of the race, because they really have the right of way and you don't.
Yeah, the whole, like you said, you got that stopwatch accuracy.
Yes, and I had my stopwatch.
You probably have stopwatches going. And
absolutely, which I then compare against the times that come off the logger and off of the timers on the ground, because you can have technology errors.
Sure.
Or mix-ups between you and another team.
So in any one day, and you said how many days was it take you in this last race? How many days were you along the way?
You have 4 days to do the race.
Okay.
Okay. Now, because of really bad weather, not just at Fairhope, but also the first stop, that morning, the race decided to cancel those legs. They say, okay, make your way to
so they changed
Harrison,
your course,
Arkansas.
or route.
No, you just lop off the first couple.
Okay,
Go to one
still
of the
end up, okay.
Yeah, because the FAA provides us a waiver to be able to do these low flybys.
Okay.
To fly 200 feet above the runway.
Okay.
Just
see somebody's out there for solo, and you come
right,
by at 200
right,
feet. There's
right.
like, what's going on?
Right, and you're as close to a runway as we are to those hangar doors over there.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or maybe even a little closer.
Yeah.
All right. So we get a waiver from the FAA, and it only applies to the airports that are on the designated route. Okay?
And how many planes were in this? You may have said that. I missed it.
There were 45 who registered. I'm trying to remember. We had ones that dropped out for mechanical and health and other kinds of things. I think we had maybe 39 that actually finished in Spokane.
Okay.
And so, going from Harrison to Spokane.
2,400 miles, 4 or 5 days, and all that time in between, and...
Yeah, and that second day of the race, we did 4 legs, which is a lot to do in one day. And fortunately, the Mooney is fast enough to be able to do that. Now, if you're in a 172, maybe not. And that's one of the most popular airplanes for the collegiate teams.
Is the 172s?
172s,
okay.
Yes.
Okay. And so, just out of sick curiosity, what's the difference between first, second, and third in time? How much? What kind of time are we talking? Minutes?
It varies. This year, the difference is measured in terms of miles, if you will.
Okay, so from when the first person, and how many miles before the next person? Okay.
Right. And so this year there was a fair degree of difference. It's about 2. for the people who came in first versus those who came in second. There have been years where the top, like 7 or 8, have been different by less than a mile. Okay, so the measurements are down to fractional seconds.
Yeah, so maybe I said seconds, it's fractional seconds
Yes,
really at
it's
the end.
to 3 decimal places.
Wow. Wow.
And there have been years where, there have been ties in the top places.
And how many years have you been participating in this type of racing?
Yeah. Well, in this type of racing, my first race was in 1986.
Wow.
Okay. This particular race, the Air Race Classic, this was my 28th race.
Okay,
Yes,
so you have a presence.
I'm the old lady in racing this.
I'm going to say the most experienced.
Most experienced. Well, last year, and the year before, the honors were taken by Marie Carastro, who last year she beat her age record and came back again at age 95. And no, she was not just in the cockpit. She flew left seat. She decided that year she only wanted to fly one leg. But because there was such a good tailwind for the last leg of the day, she flew with her daughter and her granddaughter.
How nice.
And her daughter said, "We gotta go, everybody stay in your seats."
We're going to go.
Because we only have enough time to get there. I think they got there maybe 5 minutes before the deadline.
Mm-hmm.
And Marie said, "But I only wanted to fly one leg." She said, "Well, you're flying two."
Wow.
And
So-
yes, I mean, she did all the, take off and taxi and what have you, and then we had to get a golf cart to bring her in from the airplane.
Oh my gosh.
But she's my role model. I don't think I'll be that
Well-
spry when I'm that age.
Wow, but you said you were 26 or 28 times now?
This is the 28th.
28 times. You mentioned, and that's the same basic race.
Different
and I assume
route.
they change every year. They change
Every
it
year.
up a little bit.
Every year, different route.
And
Yeah.
and has it grown over the years? You said about 45 started this year.
Mm-hmm.
Has it been? What was it 20 years ago? Was it 10?
Okay.
Was it 50? Was it? Which way has it been going?
Well, it's interesting that you ask about history because I've gotten a couple of research grants to preserve some of the history of this race. We trace our roots back to 1929, which was the very first women's cross-country air race.
Okay.
And that started out in Santa Monica, California, went to Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay.
And that was won by Louise Thaden.
I'm not sure all these are, so you'll have to help me out with that.
Okay, that's fine. But an annual organized women's cross-country race began in 1947 from California to Florida.
Okay.
There were several that entered. There was really only one airplane that flew the course and finished, and that was of all things, an air coupe. And she did it in less than 3 days. Okay? Flight time was like 25 hours of flying time. Okay? But that particular race went until 1977. It was known as the All-Women's Transcontinental Air Race, also known as the Powder Puff Derby. And it had, at most in 1 year, 200 teams. It was very much a victim of its own success. Can you imagine
200
an airport, even one the size of Rocky
Handling.
Mountain, handling 200 airplanes with minimum 2 women, sometimes 3, in the cockpit, and hotels, transportation, banquets, hospitality,
Right.
all of those things. So they decided that particular race to complete their history. And then another group began a smaller version of that, same kind of concept, but fewer numbers of teams. And that's what we have today,
Okay.
is the Air Race Classic. We limit the number of entries
Okay.
to 60,
All right.
okay, because we figured that's the most that we can handle at any airport that we go to.
Yeah, realistically.
We try to have, like 52 is a nice sweet spot
Okay.
for us.
But you can go up to 60. I was wondering how do you decide and where you cut it off? Because 200 aircraft,
Yeah,
I can
that's
only
a lot.
imagine what that would
That's
have
a
looked
lot.
like.
Yeah, yeah. But if you want to see what it looks like, if you go to the Air Race Classic website, the airraceclassic.org.
And we'll put that up so everybody
Yeah,
can get
right.
a look at that.
So, and there are places where you can see all of the results back to 1977.
Okay.
And then up in the upper right-hand corner, there are two other related races. One of them is the Powder Puff Derby, and you can go to that site, clicking on that, that will take you to that site, where you can see all of the history, all the people who won, competed.
So you've talked about the three different types of opportunities racing, but it sounds like where your heart really is in the cross country, and that's
Absolutely. Yeah, it really is.
and you've got such a long history with it, and it gives back to you, you give to it, and it's really. So I've learned something new today. I mean, I learned a good bit about. I didn't know anything about it, and our audience is going to learn something as well. So the other organization you mentioned, and I don't have a lot of history, I don't know enough about it. I'd like to hear how it's influenced your life. Is the 99s? And
Well, yeah, the 99s has been very instrumental in my aviation career, my aviation journey. Between my husband and them, I owe a lot to where it is that we are today. Now, he introduced me to the local chapter, and the local chapter, as I said earlier, had an air race that they sponsored. But the interesting thing about the 99s, it's an international organization. Has chapters all around the globe, numerous chapters here in the United States. And you start at the local level, but you get to know women in lots of different walks of life, many different kinds of aviation journeys, if you will. For me, it all started, and it's also very current, with getting to know the folks in the local chapter, doing things with them. We foster camaraderie, support for each other. The 99s began back in 1929, just after that very first race that I mentioned in Cleveland. The legend is that they got together under the grandstand and got talking about the fact that they really should start an organization for women for mutual support, because they felt that they needed it in what was a predominantly men's world. So they had an organizational meeting in New York and a call out to all of the current pilots. Of those, I think there were maybe 120, 130 pilots in the US that were women, and of those, 99 signed up by the deadline, and that's how the name came about.
Somebody told me, I said, what a coincidence. So,
well, it's not a coincidence. They were going to name themselves by, we could be the 101st.
Oh, okay, so whoever showed up.
Or we could be the 74th, whatever, but we're the 99s.
Okay.
And there were other regional women's aviation organizations, but they gradually became part of that.
Kind of embrace the 99s approach.
Right. We have sections, if you will, many of whom trace their history back to those other organizations. Plus now we have international sections, and international sections sponsor the annual conference that we have. This year's conference was actually in Burlington, Vermont. Last year's was in Vancouver.
Okay.
I went to the annual conference that was held recently in Jordan.
Wow.
We really do try to do things internationally because it brings a very, very different perspective to us as women pilots, particularly when you talk to those who fly for Air India. Air India has more women pilots than any other airline in the world. Yes. I believe the statistics, and I may have these wrong, but if I remember correctly, in the US, we have maybe 6 to 8% female pilots
Okay, I wouldn't have known that number either, but
and
yeah.
those the fly at commercial airlines, it's about that number
Okay.
at airlines. Whereas I believe Air India, it's something like a quarter of their pilots are women.
Okay.
Okay, one of the most interesting is in Saudi Arabia. Women can't drive, but they can fly.
I hate to beat you to punch. That sounds too easy. You set that one up too easy for me.
But yeah. So have a lot of barriers that have been broken, but there still remain. Yeah.
So and kind of the mission of the 99s is how do you qualify? Is that about training, bringing women into aviation? What do you?
We have sort of a combination mission. A good part of it is mutual support. Much of it is education. We have a lot of scholarships,
Okay.
both for those getting their first license as well as for advanced ratings and degree programs and research scholars, which is what I took advantage of for my research on the predecessor race, the Powder Puff Derby. We also own 2 museums. One is the Museum of Women Pilots in Oklahoma City.
Okay.
That's where all of the memorabilia and the records for the predecessor race are stored. I've spent a lot of quality time there.
That's in, you said Oklahoma?
Oklahoma City.
Okay, and I want to make sure we get that information and post that up as well in our discussion.
Sure. Yeah. In fact, if you have some layover time in Oklahoma City, you can go visit the museum, which is right on the property there. The second museum is in Atchison, Kansas. It's the Amelia Earhart Birthplace Museum.
Ah.
Yeah, it's where she was born and grew up. The house has been preserved with much of the furniture from that period, a few things from her family legacy, but a lot of it is to provide the context within which she grew up.
Where she started, kind of that foundation.
That foundation. Plus, as I said, we have the international outreach that we have as an organization, and we also do our very best to foster relationships with other aviation organizations to see how it is that we can all build a bigger pie.
So it kind of works nice when everybody drops their guard a little bit about having the best organization and put something together like that.
Yeah.
And that's what I see so many barriers, people that don't want to cooperate, they're afraid they may give something up where you're using it as a platform to build something.
Well, in each aviation organization has different members, different purposes, different cultures, if you will. I'm a life member of the 99s. I'm also a life member of Women in Aviation.
That's the other one.
Which, the 99s is specifically for women who are pilots, student pilots on up.
Okay.
Whereas Women in Aviation supports women in all walks of aviation.
Okay.
Maintenance, dispatch, air traffic control, regulatory, you name it. Plus, it's open to men as members to both support women, but also they too can apply for all of the scholarships.
Okay.
And have in fact won them, which I think is a great thing. But I'm also a life member of AOPA, Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, very different kind of organization, different kinds of mission, and the Experimental Aircraft Association. Once again,
well, I knew I couldn't get all that out at one time, but those organizations, I mean, those are the pillars of the marketplace, really.
Right.
And when you think of the AOPA, EEA, and then you just talked about I've heard about it. And kind of one of the unique things about my interaction with different people here, I learned so much about different things that are going on out there that I didn't know about, but maybe many others do. But it's really fascinating how you work together, how you get things done between women in aviation, and put all that together.
Yeah, we try to coordinate with the local Women in Aviation chapter and try to do some sort of something together each year, but also to promote each other's events and what have you. They, as I said, they appeal to different people. And so the broader you can have your reach, the better. There is so much that needs to be done, in my opinion, in educating people about aviation, in drawing in that next generation, the younger folks, in providing support, ways to get them involved. And recently, I've given a presentation to an event held through the Civil Air Patrol about women in aviation, the aviation journey. I did another one for my university virtually because they're having an aviation camp this year. Lawrence University, it's only just up at the other end of the lake from Oshkosh. My goodness. Although while I was there, I never knew a thing about what was going on
At Oshkosh. Well, you were focused on some other things, I would imagine. But
absolutely.
I think that's really one of the goals that I have in these discussions, is to show how people get into aviation. Women, men, whatever. People can see, like you talk about your journey, you started in IT and how that went. You took the business platform, and while you had a kind of this side thing going with flying, and how that played into so much. And the other thing that I really enjoy in the aviation, and specifically with all these conversations, is how willing people are to help others get into it. They are really excited about. When I was talking to our mutual friend Matt Beyer there, he couldn't be more excited about how he brings other people into aviation.
Yeah, well, and he's serving a very important function for me now as I age, and I am less capable in the cockpit. Anymore these days, I don't fly alone. I fly with somebody else, and so he's a good buddy to have an adventure with. I mean, our next adventure, we're talking about. I'm trying to fly to all the different airports in the state of Colorado.
Okay.
And there's some out east, and he's saying, well, let's use pilotage. Maybe I have a paper chart somewhere. And I'm like, yeah, why not? Something different.
And you in this beautiful plane behind us
no,
here too? You
no.
get a little bit of that time?
I wish I did. No, we rent
some planes,
Cessna
okay.
182s.
Well, I know a big part of our conversation when Matt was kind enough to lend us some space here today, and you were feeling right at home.
Oh, absolutely.
When
this
we're in
is such a joy.
When in the Mooney environment here, and this has just got to be just kind of a wonderful venue for us to have this conversation. So you were talking, maybe you're flying less or you have whatever, but looking forward into your general aviation or aviation future, anything on the horizon for you? Just trying to keep enjoying it when you can, or any thoughts on?
Well, I've been very active behind the scenes in the Air Race Classic, doing a lot with their combining my IT background, if you will, and it's kind of a legacy for me, and so I am trying to work with the next set of folks coming along behind me.
Here you go, giving again. Good for you.
Yes, I am in both documenting what I've done, training them, bringing them up to speed, handing things over, and taking a lot of joy when they just make it their own. And so doing that, I also spend a good amount of time each year being what's known as a mother bird, which is it's a program within the Air Race to have an experienced racer take under their wing a new team. And answer their questions, be a buddy for them.
Kind of coach them up.
And help dispel anxieties. It takes different forms every year. And this year I was a mother to three, both a team plus the woman I was flying with who had never raced before.
Oh man, what an opportunity for her to get all that experience for those
Now, I
days.
shared my racing secrets with her, but not with the other team.
Sounds like she got some insight. I don't, what's her name?
Annabelle.
Annabelle, you better watch this, and I'm going to ask her to tell me a couple secrets before we go here. But that sounds like
Not on the air.
No, not on the air. Nothing on the air, of course. But you're in good company, so Annabelle, good for you. And it's really great that you're giving back. And that's another part. Like I said, the aviation community. I haven't run into anybody that isn't figuring out how to give back.
Right.
From we've talked about the friend. Brian Schiff or whatever,
Yes,
the different people that
And
I've had the
Brian's
pleasure to
too.
talk about a guy that gives back on and on and on.
Brian does a fabulous job.
I mean, I don't know, talk about a person that stays busy. He's flying big planes too at the
Right.
same time while he's doing all this great education.
He's got his new program.
Yes, he's got the new
Which is
program. I
great.
watched it the other night with his dad, Barry, and what a hoot that was.
That's
So
a great
I'm
episode.
hoping that we can, Barry, if you're watching, we're going to get a chance to talk to you as well. Before I forget, in all the cross country, anything go less than perfect? Is there maybe a moment or something that stuck out that it was something or that you might want
That
to?
is a little bit of pucker factor.
Yeah, that's a good way. Thanks for saying that. But
Yes, I've had a couple of instances. One in particular, and this was before you had in-cockpit weather.
okay,
And in fact, it was before you had GPS navigation.
wow,
Well,
okay.
before
So with all
all
VOR
this.
and
And this was on an air race.
okay.
And the weather had been, East Coast VFR all day long. Which is okay. Your clear clouds.
Yep, looking good.
Yeah, right. And we're of course Colorado Flyers. All right. But I remember getting a weather briefing on this next leg because the only way you could get it at that time was by phone.
Right,
So I
call
called
the
him.
weathers.
Okay, I called the weather service and he said, all right, there's going to be a line of thunderstorms, but they're going to be west of you, a good, 50, 80 miles. You'll have a great light show. Great. Okay, but it's good from here to the airport that you're going to. All right, so we're flying along, going fast. I looked at my chart, and although visibility wasn't real great, so okay, the airport's 20 miles ahead of us. Okay, there are no obstacles on the ground between here and there. We're all good. And I look up, and then what I see in front of me is a roll cloud, which is a horizontal tornado.
That moving toward you?
I mean, it was right there.
Oh, okay,
Right there. Okay.
All right.
And the visibility wasn't great. Turned out it was this big, huge thunderstorm. Okay, so I said to Chris, okay, I'm doing my right seat, hard right, okay? And, we kept going. It turned out we slid underneath a thunderstorm, underneath the eastern edge of it,
Okay.
okay? All right, so, the kicking it. I'm watching the ground. I said, Chris, don't climb. I've got the ground. I'll tell you, you're on your instruments, going. And the conventional wisdom is that if you slide underneath, don't turn around. Okay, just keep going. Okay, so we slid underneath. We popped out the other side. And meanwhile, I'm navigating her. Okay, we're going to the lighter parts. I'm keeping the ground. Chris, you just keep us wings level. Pop out the other side. There's the airport. And she says, should we do the flyby for timing? Darn right we do the flyby for timing.
We didn't go through all of this and take that without making that.
Okay, so flyby for timing, come back around, land. The ground crew, after we shut down, hauled the airplane, shoved into a hangar, and then the downpour, because that was then...
You were following, it was right coming at you.
Yeah. Boy, was that, thinking about it afterwards. And you couldn't see, and there was no radar, nothing you could get in the cockpit, nada. So people today don't realize what they have, what a safety net we have.
You beat me to the punch because, again, when I started my journey, and that was a long time ago as well, and then I sort of had to put it on hold, But I put it on hold for what was more important at the time. When I started flying again, and I said, yeah, I just learned off VORs, and back in that day we were flying 150s, 152 with no headsets or anything. We had a mic and a speaker in the ceiling, and they go, what? Yeah, that's sort of how I got started. So now today, whoever looks at it's GPS, and everybody sort of gets spoiled. But I feel kind of lucky that I was able to learn with that background. Have that other dimension of navigation.
Yeah. Well, what I should have done, okay, knowing that was 50 to 80 miles away, what I should have done is on that leg called on the radio to get
flight
service updates, and I didn't. I took the guy at his word that it wasn't going to be a factor for us, as opposed to double checking.
Yeah.
Trust but verify. I didn't verify.
Well, that's the kind of reason I like to kind of poke people to talk a little bit about that, because it happens, and we learn from it. And I bet as you went in the future, you did a bit more of that.
Well, now, even with what we have in the cockpit, I still double check it.
Yeah.
Because of that lesson learned.
Well, when I was talking with our friend again, Matt, we were kind of talking about the mountain flying. I keep pointing out here because it's right out there in front of us. But even with weather here, it's so dynamic and changing. You really got to be, a bit of more of a weather expert, is the term that comes to mind, versus when I'm flying on the East Coast and we're down at sea level and we got something. Now, weather can sneak up on you and you need to be aware of it. But I find that the weather here, you have to stay on it, because it can really sneak up on you.
Yeah, and I feel fortunate to have learned to fly out here, because you get in your face with density altitude. You can't avoid it. You can't get the airplane started without understanding that if you try to do it with full mixture, it's not going to start.
That's right.
Ever.
Right. And we, again, I get spoiled on that because I never think too much about that down at sea level. Airfields at 40 some feet off the ground,
right?
And versus we're at 5,600 here or whatever we're at, and that density altitude, just for your performance, every aspect.
Right.
You have to.
Plus, I feel very fortunate that my initial instructor was so flexible, because I had so much right seat time. But I don't know how many hundreds of hours of right seat time I had before I actually moved into the left seat. But my dual cross country was a mountain checkout.
Okay.
He found 150 horse 152. So I don't know where he found these
I was going to
airplanes.
say, where did you come up with that?
I just showed up, and Norm had these airplanes, and I'm like, okay, great. But we flew to Leadville.
Haven't been there yet, but I'm working on it.
Yeah. Well, there you really need to watch density altitude, because the field elevation is almost 10,000 feet.
Right.
And then we went to Glenwood Springs, which is a one-way airport.
Yeah.
One way in, one way out.
Right.
Okay, and then flying thermals. Went to Granby, and then coming up over the Continental Divide to come back. It's like yesterday, those lessons. They just stick with me.
They stick with you, and I think of Glenwood myself, because Matt took me over there and said, well, we got to get you on this. If you can get through this, and we think we have a chance. So he took me over, and then and we had a really nice experience there as well. But not to get too far off the beaten track here. I think wonderful career, wonderful journey.
Yes.
Wonderful. I love you. You have such a unique transition from how you took the business to aviation, and how it's still such a big part of your life. Your give back and your participation, and I'm sure we're just hitting the tip of the iceberg with the 99s, and you talk about going out and speaking to people and bringing that experience, taking the racing team and being the one that was it the mother bird, and helping in that role, all giving back. It's really what my mission is to get that stuff out, because I'm not sure that all that stuff would get out, because you seem, like you said, pretty humble about all of it,
thank
but
you.
you've done a lot. And while we've planned, I've had such a pleasure talking with you and getting this all together, and with our little bit of technology things that nobody else is going to know about but you and me. We had a lot of fun today. So I hope you enjoyed it, and
did.
I thank you very much for taking the time and visiting with me. And as we talked about, there's going to be some links for the 99s and for the air racing and for a couple other things we talked about. I'm going to get those up on the when we post this video, so you can get out there and take a look and see what Gretchen has done in her flying and how she's giving back in such a wonderful way. So as always, got to remind you, please subscribe, give us a thumbs up, let us know what we're doing right, who else we can talk to have some more wonderful conversations like we had today. And it's like we always say here, watch out for that turbulence in any one day and look for those blue skies. And we look forward to joining you again on the next Old Fly Guy conversation.